Hey guys, this is Daniel from ThatDAMBrand, and today I'm going to be talking about the rise of indie games. In the early 2010s, I noticed that more indie games were coming to Xbox, which is my platform of choice. I remember playing Limbo, Fez, and Bastion, and thinking they were really good games. I know indie was kind of prominent in the PC area, but it was the first time they actually came out into the big consoles, like Microsoft and PlayStation. And that's when you really started noticing that them make a big impact. Hell, Dusk and Elysian Tale, forgive me if I say that name wrong, was published by Microsoft, by an independent developer. So this was really showing that the indie games were starting to make a dent in how traditional console gaming was, which we all know, unfortunately, now that I'm a PC gamer, that the console gaming is where the money's at. While having successful launches on consoles such as the Xbox and the PlayStation showed that indie games can survive in a mainstream market, most of the games to be ported to the consoles in the first place had to show a success rate on PC, where most of the innovation was happening. Thanks to PC being an open platform and digital distribution, indie game designers were able to produce games at tighter budgets than ever before. The best thing about indie games is that they allow fresh ideas to come to the table. If we only relied on AAA publishers, we would be only getting Call of Duties, Battlefields, and Assassin's Creeds. As long as an idea is good enough to hold on its own, the indie game most likely will find funding, if the game is constructed well. Although securing funding hasn't always been an easy thing. Kickstarter was one of the early ways game developers tried to secure funds for their indie games. The basic premise of Kickstarter was that the game developer would start a Kickstarter, they would put the basic premise of their game, maybe show some concept art, show a roadmap of the game development, and put a goal of how much money they think they need to produce the game. They would offer incentives depending on what tier that you would commit money to. It could be alpha access, beta access, an exclusive form where you have inside information from the developer and you can guide the development process. And sometimes you would get the game on launch. Unfortunately, some developers overpromised and underdelivered, and sometimes they wouldn't even finish at all as their goal wasn't enough to make the game. So Kickstarter got a bad reputation, and game developers and gamers themselves stopped really going towards that platform. No one really trusted the system anymore. I was personally burned by a Kickstarter project. I don't want to name any names of the game, but when I was younger, I spent a lot of time playing this game, and they faded off after a while, like they stopped making the game, and there was an indie dev that was promising to bring back a spiritual successor of the game, and they even got the creative director from the original game. So I thought it was going to be the original game just called something different else with different skins. And that's what they were showing in videos, in art, and in the level design. Well, I gave around, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was either $500 or $600. It was a pretty good chunk of change. And around 3 to 4 months after the project was completed, and their goal was $100,000, and they got that from a lot of fans who've been seeking a game like that for quite some time and haven't been able to find one. The creative director leaves after like 4 months after the Kickstarter was successful. I know, and this was back in 2014, 2013. I still see the game on Steam. I own the game because I threw so much money at the project, and it looks like it's finally getting into shape, but it was just sad to be promised a working game in a year, 2 years, and now 4 years down the road, the game is still in an alpha state. The best way that I've seen indie game developers secure funding has been early access. An early access game is when a game launches incomplete and the player who buys the game knows that the game is incomplete. They know that the game is still working through bugs, still getting content. And while some games have died in early access, and unfortunately I think that's going to happen with any sort of incident or any sort of type of funding for an indie game, there have been major successes out of the early access. One that I've personally been involved in is Warframe. When I first started playing it back in 2013, I signed up to be a founder. While I didn't give them as much money as I think I should have, I'm happy to be a part of one of the first people to play the game. I have a founder's form picture. I have some items that only I can ever get. And now that the game has exploded and is huge, and it's awesome to see the game in the state of infancy grow to what it is now. It's a great feeling to be a part of that. Another great success story of early access is PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. This game started off as a little PC game, and it grew into a phenomenon before it even came out of early access. Before the game was even done, it had millions of players. Then went on console, player base exploded, and the game got so big that AAA publishers are trying to cash in on the game genre's popularity. Indie games have gotten so big that there are conventions just for indie games now. When I was at PAX South, at first I was disappointed that there was no AAA publishers there outside of Capcom. But after wandering around and looking at all the games that were there, I noticed that I was actually really happy that mainly indie games were there for just to see all the new ideas. Everything was so different out of what I would be seeing at a AAA convention. Because you go to a AAA convention, you're just going to see shooters. All in all, indie games have been very successful and they're here to stay. Steam is giving indie games an excellent platform to release their games on, and Microsoft and Sony are not too far behind, as it looks like they're working closely with some indie game developers to deliver a platform that allows them to release their games on their platforms, being Xbox Live and PSN. I wanted to briefly go over how indie games became popular and mainstream. To support my next video, which I will be talking about how indie games saved gaming for me. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share and subscribe. It really does help us out and help us grow our channel. Please check out some other videos. We have a podcast, reviews, and just plain gameplay video if that's your thing. Talk to you guys later. Peace.